Thanks, Deb, and welcome everyone for tonight's presentation. As Deb said, my name's Michael. I'm the principal and director at Savour Permaculture, and I've been using technology with regards to design or observational aspects of design is more specific with regards to it rather than design itself. Probably for the last 10 years out of the 11 years I've been doing this. The reason being is I can't draw. And so I had to learn to find other ways to being able to articulate what I was getting at to my clients, and technology came into play. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the screen so we can launch into tonight's presentation. All right, so with tonight's presentation with regards to digital tools for permaculture. Now, I really wanted to highlight that the purpose of this session is not design. So when you're looking about using this technology, it's really about gathering information. So the outline of today's seminar or webinar is about discovering free digital tools. So what I've done is I've narrowed it down to a few. There are so many tools out there. And so what I did is narrowed it down to probably about 9 different tools that are free and readily available for people. So therefore you can actually you just get home and start playing with these things yourself. All right. So and apps that can support permaculture practice. The main focus will be about observation and information gathering. So the first design principle, regardless of whether you're using Mollison's or David Holmgren's or there's heaps of other ones that all start with the words observe. So it's really about observing and gathering information. So therefore we can make informed decisions after we see patterns and history and all sorts of other stuff in design, so we can move forward in that space. So observation matters. And, it's, for a long time, people were sort of talking about, observe your site for 12 months before you do anything. You can see it in the different seasons where the sun rises and sun sets. These days, we have access to a massive amount of information that we can actually use and utilize to speed that process up. And I particularly like the way David Holmgren highlighted it's not just observe, but observe and interact, because as we're interacting, not just with the technology, but also with our landscapes, the learning curve is exponential. It really raises quite quickly, and it's not a fail, but a first attempt in learning. So permaculture, we're taught to spend time observing before making changes. It's not about rushing in, it's about taking our time. The more detail we notice about the sun, the wind, the rain, the soil, plants, animals, the better our designs become. And that's the thing, we can either rush in and then we're spending a lot of our time sort of trying to shore up our foundations, or we can spend, a bit more time or a bit of time in observations, and then we can make educated and informed decisions that's actually going to make it more seamless, more connections, and it's going to make it flow a lot better. These apps can be used as an extension to our senses. So one of the things I'm going to talk about in here is not just the apps, but when I finish tonight, I'm going to invite you that if you go to experiment with these particular technologies, don't just do it behind a computer. If you're doing it on a phone, go outside and do it at the same time. So you're interacting with your landscape as you are gathering the information. That is going to give you so much more than looking on a screen. We can get caught up with the idea of it being on a screen or using a drone or using a dumpy or getting into all this particular technology stuff. But really getting out on the landscape, I can't highlight this enough, is critically important rather than just doing it from behind a screen. So these are tools that we can actually help with our observational processes. So the role of digital tools and observation, these tools are not here to make design decisions for us. That is still up to us, right? It's about recording what we see in a consistent way. And it's organized as per the way you like to organize things rather than any sort of standardized version. Okay, larger sets of data. There is a massive amount of data online these days that's readily available. And like I said, I've chosen apps and programs that are free. So, you can, in a short period of time, you can gather a lot of information with regards to a site. Mapping features accurately so we can revisit them later. So there are tools that we can use that can actually make notes on, and in different layers, again, that are completely free, that are online, and it actually gives us a little more not just with regards to accuracy, but also the way we move across the landscape. We can actually map that and put that in quite easily using these apps, which is actually really cool. And carry the information with us in the field, whether it be on a tablet or on a phone. So when you're walking around your property, having it on your phone, for example, and a lot of people do these days. I mean, my phone's far more powerful than the Commodore 64 I grew up with, let alone anything else. But there's a massive amount of data we can have, and as we're walking around, it can actually, using the idea of either GPS or other mapping tools, we can actually pinpoint various things while we're walking on the landscape, and it's going to be marking it out for us rather than us actually getting out there and constantly having to measure or other things as well. It's helping to make more accurate mapping, which is actually really cool. So we're going to start with sun and shade. Like anything, you start with climate and then work your way down. So when we're looking at observation, where can we get the data with regards to sun and shade? And there's a number of different apps. So I've narrowed it down to 3 different apps that we can look at, and we'll explore one of those, which is a web-based one, though you can use it on your phone as well, called SunCalc. But we're gathering this information, and it's not just the averages we're looking at, it's the extremes. Now, when you're going in, you could wait time and go out there and map it out and sort of physically, whether you're marking it out with stakes or something else, where the sun, where the shade patterns fall at different times of the year. And that's a really cool observation tool because you're grounding the knowledge that you're learning, but getting the apps and actually getting the information means in a short period of time, we can gather where the sun's going to rise, where it's going to set at different times of year. We can look at length of shadows based on the height of buildings and other stuff really, really quickly. So the key features when you're looking at for any particular app with regards to the sun is you're looking to track the sunrise and sunset times for your location or for any location. Makes it easy so when you move around, you can take it with you. Visualize the sun's path across the sky throughout the year. Identify full sun or partial sun or shaded areas in different seasons. And some apps actually provide augmented reality views, so you can actually see the sun's trajectory in real time on your device. So as you're moving it through, it actually showing you or it's telling you where it's going to go at different times of the day before it even gets there, which is actually really cool. So the 3 different ones we're going to be exploring tonight, or the 3 ones we're going to talk about, we're going to be exploring SunCalc though. So suncalc.org, okay, it's a web-based free browser. Okay, I quite like using this one. While you can use your phones for a lot of things, I guess I'm a little old school, getting on my computer to do it, and then I go out and ground truth it on the landscape. But it's a really nice one. It shows where the sun position rises and sets at any location on the earth. So I can go anywhere and it was going to work regardless. Provides a simple interface for seeing daylight length and seasonal changes. So you can actually scroll through different seasons, different times, different dates. It's actually going to give you the differences. It's web-based, so it works well on desktops and tablets with that installation. It also, if you've got a smartphone or a relatively recent smartphone, it will actually work on your smartphones as well. And there's an app you can download for it as well. So I found out today when I was exploring it. The next one is Sunseeker. So there's limited free features with regards to this. So there's a paid version and an unpaid version. So the free version is somewhat limited, but it's a mobile app with 3-dimensional augmented reality view for the sun's path. So you're getting 3D reality as far as that. The second part of it is it allows you to see how sunlight moves across your property at different times of the year. So again, you don't necessarily have to be on a computer to be able to do it. You can be outside, checking it as you're walking the landscape, and also seeing it through reality and 3D real time. It's useful for observing where shade falls on gardens and structures. So as you're using it, it's actually helping you to help determine where some of the shade patterns will be able to form just by merely using it, which is a really cool feature. That being said, always ground truth it after you've gone through that. And the last one is Sun Surveyor Lite. So it's another one that's free. It's a downloadable online one that you can get for your phone. It offers interactive compass view and maps for tracking the sun angles based on that. Can calculate sunlight exposure for any point on your property. Which is really useful when you're looking at being able to placement of elements when you finally get to the stage of design. And free version gives essential tracking features suitable for observation. So again, there's a paid version and a free version, but there's some really nice features when using that. Now I'm going to stop sharing this here, and then I'm going to go into looking at SunCalc so we can have a look to see how that works. So give me a second. All right. So this is suncalc.org. It's a very simple one. It's easy to use. Now, what I've done here is if you have a look up here on the left-hand side at the top, you'll see that there's an address where it says 1 to 17 Denman Street, Leichhardt. That's my local community centre. So I've just used that as a pinpoint for this particular exercise. So what you do is you type in your address into that, and it will come up with a link underneath that you click on, and it will quite literally take you to where your property is, straight up. Now, underneath that, you can see here that it's got dates and times. So if I was to click on that there, where it's the date, I can actually change it. So what I've done, I've already preset it for December, well, it's 2025, but the summer solstice is the 21st of December. Now that's an extreme, so it's the longest date of the year. So what we're looking at is the maximum amount of sunlight that's going to be hitting our property. So clicking on that, all right, and then it's gone on. And as you can see, the angles here have changed. Now there are three lines. There's an orange, a yellow or slightly yellow, and a darker orange one. Now, where these two are that are coming from the angle from the southeast to the southwest, that's the sun angles of where they rise and set on that day in the morning and in the afternoon. So it's rising in the southeast in the morning and then setting in the southwest in the afternoon. This arc that goes over the top is about how high the sun is in the sky. So the closer it is to the pin, the higher it is in the sky. So you're getting a lot of daylight hours in using that. Now, if you want to map this out or save this on an app or in any sort of folder or anything, it's easy just to take a print screen or a snapshot, clip, and then be able to save that as a PNG or a JPEG or whatever you're using to be able to upload it into a particular file so you have that for later on. Now, the other date we tend to look at in permaculture is not just the summer solstice, but the winter solstice. So going back into the calendar, we change it through to June, okay, and the winter solstice is June 21st. So if you have a look, you can see that the angles have changed. So the sun's rising in the northeast and setting in the northwest, and you can see that angle arc for the sun is actually further away, so it's indicating that it's lower in the horizon. That's giving us a lot of information just straight up. Now, on here on the image as well, you'll be able to see, now if I move this around, see how we go here. You'll see on the bottom, there's a little black dot. That is indicating potential length of shadow with regards to your property. And so if you go, have a look here on the left-hand side and we scroll down, all right, we can actually, where is it? You know, when it's all there before and then all of a sudden you go to look for it and you can't find it. Oh, here we go. So here it's talking about the height and the shadow length. So if you're here on the left-hand side, you can just see it's got shadow length in meters and the object height. So if you've got something that you know that your building, say, for example, is 15 meters tall, you change that to 15. All right, take it on. And then as the sun changes, you get to see what, we move it across the top, you get to see how long the shadow is over that particular area. So you can see in winter or at different times as the sun's setting or as it's rising, how much shade you're going to have that's going to affect certain parts of your property. Right, so as you're going through, you can move this around so you can change the pin and it will just move it for you. And then you just move this back and forth and it's indicating, and it's actually telling you here what the length of the shadow is going to be here on the left-hand side. And it at different times of the year. So, you know, this is on the June 21st, but let's go pick a random date. Let's go April 9th. All right, so you can see the angles have changed. Okay, it's still that 15-meter size building, but as we move it to different times of day, okay, let's look at sunrise. So as sun rising, you can see how long the shadow length is from that particular area. Then as it's going through the day, getting shorter and shorter. Now, that's important to note because, you know, a lot of the stuff, if we're talking about the biological field of the plants, we need at least 6 to 8 hours worth of sunlight a day to actually hit that. So, and that's all year, unless you're putting deciduous stuff into space. Then it can go dormant over the winter period and stay in the shadow, and it's not a problem. But it's a nice little tool that we can very quickly assess how it's going to be affecting our site with regards to not just when the sun rises and sets and the amount of sun that's coming in, but also the amount of shadow that's going to be falling over different parts. And like I said, you can actually move this around, which is actually really cool. And that's going to give you a really good the information to be able to see how far that shadow is going to fall in those spaces at different times of the year as well. Right, so that's a nice, free, easy tool that you can get into and use. Right. All right, so that's the three different ones. So all of them can be used on your smartphones, but SunCalc is more specifically with regard to web-based. I like to use SunCalc because when I'm doing reports or something, or I'm doing some bigger stuff, I'm on the computer, not necessarily on my phone. But if you're doing it for yourself or you're out on a landscape, having Sunseeker or Sun Surveyor, and then being able to take some snapshots and upload it into a folder, and I will show you programs that you can use to do that, so you can keep that information nice and close to you at all times. Because you can't always keep running back to the house to write things down. So tips for using these particular apps. What we're looking at here is spending time walking your property at different times of the day while using the app. So it's not just using the app to get the information, always ground truth it. So if you're doing it at the same time, it's like I say to my PDC students that if you're going to design, don't just do it from inside. Go out into the space that you're actually looking at designing and do it in that space. You get more creative, you get the feel for the space at the same time while you are actually putting pen to paper. And it's the same when you're gathering information and using these apps. It's great to see the app or use the app to get the information, but ground truth it while you're in the space. So therefore you get to see, again, in real time, how it's going to work. Taking screenshots or notes for future reference is also really cool. And you date them as well. So when you took them, so if there is a change over time, as your site gets more developed, as it gets more mature, you'll find that the information's changing, and it's always good to go back and have a look at that history stuff in the long run. And also combined observations with physical markers like stakes, flags to visually confirm the app predictions. Okay, so putting it in and then making it real. Like I said, all these apps are really about observation, not so much about design. Cool. All right, Adam, is there any questions so far with regards to the use with regards to sun and shade?
So it assumes the area is flat. I mean, if there is a hill creating um, a later sunrise on my area.
And that's where the ground truthing really comes in. The apps can only take it so far. And so getting out there on the landscape with the information so you can ground truth it at the same time. It will tell you where the sun's going to rise. It doesn't mean it's going to be hitting your property at that time. It might be later because of a hill, or it could be because of trees or forests or other things as well. That's the reality of the landscape. But those apps will tell you where it rises and where it sets, not so much when the time frame when it'll hit your property. That's where you got to ground truth it. Now there are apps you can use or programs you can use that are free, but they do require a level of skill, and like SketchUp and something where you can make a 3D model, and then that's a whole different level of programming and usage and skill base that's required. It is free, but it's just at a completely different level than what we can do and talk about this evening. Is there any other questions, Adam?
Let me just check if there is another one. We've had Talara say one thing I find useful is using uh, good Earth footage. Is that meant to be Google Earth footage? And going back through as many dates as there is past imaging for. There's
Yeah.
less data, but the data is very accurate to the reality.
Mm. And this is where you start marrying it together. So that's where you're still getting the observation phase. But what I've done is broken up into we're starting with sun and shade. We will get to using some mapping stuff as well later on. Well, in tonight's presentation, just briefly, and we'll be pointing you in different directions as far as that's concerned as well. But yeah, you're getting this information and then you're bringing it together. And so you've organized, discovering where the sun's rising and setting and how long the shadow is at different times of the year, and then overlaying that on your mapping so you can actually see how it affects. All right, so the next one we're going to be looking at is weather and climate data. Okay, with everything being at extremes in a lot of parts of the world for the minute, having some really good data to work with is really important. But also it gives us the numbers that we can actually use in design. So, there are gardens that I'm currently working on, for example, and we've looked at the rain apps and the weather apps, and we've gathered the information with regards to not just the highest rainfall, but the lowest rainfall, and designed the garden so it's actually not going to require any other input outside of what is being provided by the environment. But we're looking at the lowest extreme, so therefore it's going to be surviving regardless of whether it's the highest or the lowest. It's not designing for the average. So there are some great places we can actually have a look to get this data, but understanding your local weather patterns and climate trends is crucial for observing how your landscape behaves over time. Rainfall, temperature, wind, even frost events all influence soil, plant, and water management. So again, we don't start with soil. We don't start with the garden bed. We don't start with the food forest. We start with understanding where the sun is rising and setting, and then we start looking at the climate, the weather. All right, and that's helping to set the limits, the borders, the limitations set design. So once we understand the limit, then we can get creative within that space. Soil is actually really quite easy to amend. Yes, we need to understand it, but that's getting into the more design phase. That's getting into the more building a fertility plan, that sort of stuff. But when we're looking at gathering information, which is what a lot of these apps are about, it's really about the observational. So getting in and looking at that. By gathering this information consistently, you can make better informed observations and decisions, even if you're not designing it. Going in really well informed. Key features of if you're looking for any particular weather and climate app. Now, I've got a few that I work with, and 3 of those I'm going to be recommending tonight. Again, they're free, so everyone has access to. I do use programs that I've paid for, so I have access to. I'm not talking about them tonight just because the expense and it's not readily available to everyone. That being said, there's a massive amount of data that I draw from with regards to my designs on those ones. But what we're looking for is rainfall and temperature tracking over days, weeks, and months. So we need it over time, not just in one hit. Frost and heat alerts for microclimates on your property. Wind direction and speed, useful for understanding shade, wind breaks, and potential erosion areas when we get to design, after we go through an observation. And historical data to see trends over time and inform planting cycles when we're getting into the planting phase. So that's what the key features that we're looking at when we are looking at these apps to get the information that we want. Okay, like I said, there's lots and lots out there, but it's finding the key features. So the really easy one that we're very lucky to have, and it's completely free, is BOM, so the Bureau of Meteorology. So there's a lot of information. Australia's official source of accurate localized weather information. But that being said, it does depend on whether you have a weather station or BOM weather station within your area. There are some areas that don't. And the nearest one is like 60 or 70 kilometers away. And so you've got to take the information that comes from that with a grain of salt, and you've got to ground truth it in some way. Provides hourly and 7-day forecasts, radar imagery, severe weather warnings, UV index, tides, sunrises and sunset times as well. It's ideal for long-term observation and aligning your notes with official climate data. It's really free. It's free. It's really easy to use. There's so much information that we can draw from that. But yeah, so that's sort of the big one, and we'll have a look at that one, and I'll show you some of the things that we can look at in that. Now, the next one, which I find it's a free one. It's quite easy to use. Is Willy Weather. I don't know if anyone's heard of that or used it, but it's actually really quite hyper focused for particular local areas. So just if you're going into an area for the first time, or even when I'm traveling around and I'm just like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be like here. And I sort of get in and have a look at that because it's really fast, it's easy, it's local, and it's relatively accurate. Free version is robust and particularly useful for microclimate tracking around your property. So you can actually use it to help track, and you can take screenshots, you can GPS sort of locate certain things as well, and then you can use that in your designs later on. But again, it's a free one. Includes rainfall graphs, historical trends, which tend to track patterns over weeks and months. So you know what it's been like in the last few months. So it's sort of leading up to when you're seeing your observations on site, whether you're using your own property or you're going onto someone else's. And the last one is Weather Zone. So it's got a basic free version. So it provides forecasts and some meteorologist insights. Features include rainfall, probability, wind and temperature predictions. It's good for comparing forecast information with your own observations just to see patterns over time. So it's a quick, easy one. You can go in and check and just sort of go, hey, what's that saying? What am I visually seeing in the landscape, or what am I recording? And sort of marrying the two together, because we're also checking our own biases with regards to this. Just because we see something or we think something doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So we're actually confirming or denying those biases based on the information that we gathered around us. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing on this, and I'm going to open up the one for BOM. All right, there we are. So BOM. So this is for in Ipswich, because I'm currently living in Ipswich. And as you can see here, I've pulled it up. If you put in, you go into the BOM site, you find your local area or the one that's closest to you, you click on it, and this is what it opens up in. So you can see on here, it's got on the left-hand side, you can talk about temperature, talks about rainfall, talks about sunlight hours, cloudy days, temperature and humidity at different times, wind speeds. So it's got that general information there. But we scroll to the top. Now you've got here where you can see, if you can see my mouse, where it says main statistics, but on next to it, it says all available. If you click on that, it changes it, and it actually brings up an absolute ton of information that is more specific to particular times, temperatures, all that sort of stuff into one. So when you're looking at the temperature, you can see it's not just a generalized, it's looking at the highest temperature, the lowest temperature, the date that it happened. So we can actually start seeing if there's patterns that happen within that as well, as far as the climate is concerned. And if you get down to the rainfall, which is a bit further down, it's the same thing. We've got the mean rainfall, all right, but then we've got the highest. So what has it been and the year it happened? And you can start seeing patterns over time when you start looking at that and the different months. And also you can see the other side of it where it's looking at the lowest rainfall that's available. And what year that actually happened. And so you can start seeing a pattern with regards to the volume of rain that's going to be hitting your property. By no means that's the only form of water collection that we've got. We've got mists and fogs and dew points and all sorts of other stuff as well. But when you're looking specifically at rainfall and you're looking about how much water can you store or catch and store through your watershed, whether it be through dams, or you're looking at your roof and tanks, and there's a whole range of different tools that come into play. But then how can you use it effectively? All right. Now, like I said, with regards to that garden that was designing, which is sort of for a client, and they don't have to touch it at all. And so, really, because there's enough rainfall, even at its lowest period, that it's still going to thrive, which is awesome. It's going to have about a 3,000 litre surplus as far as it's concerned, which is just awesome. But what it means when it comes to using, if you want to get into a design part of that, what it means is instead of putting the tank on to water the garden, the tank's going on plumb into the house. And you're looking at going to the toilets roughly 20,000 litres per person per year. The amount for showers, the amount for washing up, the amount for it. Just so you're looking to maximise the use of it based on the data that you've got in front of you. So collecting that, and not just the average, because we're never designing for the average, we're designing for extremes. And so looking at the maximum as well as the minimum rainfall. And then you've got here with regards to wind as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is down here when we get to it. So you'll see here with regards to wind. Where is it? There we go. So there's PDF links on this as well. So what they've done is they've got a lot of that information and put it and collated it. So it actually creates a PDF file or an image that you can actually look at to see. So we're looking at the solstices again. So we're looking at extremes. So let's go down to June. So June 21st, and let's click on that. And you'll see here it comes up with a windrose. So what it does is all the information that it's gathered over the whole period of time, that's the data that's actually on the bomb, and it's collated into this particular image. And so you can see in June, winter solstice, where I'm currently situated in Ipswich, where the breezes are coming from. It's giving me the information. Now, of course, you ground truth that. I had a client a number of years ago who was in a particular, we were going through this data, and it's like, because the house was actually right in the middle of the Brisbane city, and all the skyscrapers and stuff around it, just because the data said this is where it came from, it was actually interfered with by the surrounding infrastructure. It could also be mountains, it could also be hills, it could be forest that is actually changing it. So that's why we've got to ground truth it. This is just gathering the information, but this is looking at here for the most part in Ipswich. The breezes, this is where the direction of most of the breezes is coming from. Going back, if we were to look at summer, so let's go December, so to December 21st, you can see it's very different. So we can actually start looking at which of the breezes that we find is beneficial, and we can feel that, and how we can enhance that, or how can we detract from the stuff that we don't want. It's giving us a good snapshot very, very quickly that we know where the breezes are coming at different times of the year. Now, the same can happen with rainfall and temperature. So if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see there's these little bar graphs. Okay, that is PDF files for rain and temperature and other stuff as well. So, if we look at the temperature, so let's go into here. I'll just click this one. So down the bottom here, it's got the date it was created, the time, and so that they do that the whole time. Every time you do it, it'll come up with a slightly different one, depending on what's going on in her data. But this is giving the temperature over the course of the year, so the mean temperature over the course of the year here in Ipswich, the highs and the lows. Again, you can start piecing together from gathering that information. And again, we're not creating it; it's just freely available and easily available on the graph. Same when it comes to rainfall. So if we got to rainfall, and we click on that, Again, it's dated and time stamped on the bottom, and it's got the rainfall of the average rainfall for Ipswich every month. Nice, easy, visual. Some people like spreadsheets, some people like visuals. This has got the ability to do both, which is great. And you can do the same thing with temperature. Oh, it's already done temperature, but you can do the same thing with frost points. You can do the same thing with the highest rainfall, the lowest rainfall. It's really giving you a good snapshot of what can happen on your site. And again, it's completely free. So tips for using these particular apps as far as weather is concerned. So record weather conditions alongside your own field observations. Again, we want more than just one data set to come from, so we can see if there's any anomaly. This helps validate patterns over months and seasons. You could be fortunate enough to live next to someone who's been collecting data and putting it in like noting it down for 50, 60 years. That's really quite cool if you do. I knew someone who did that for most of their life, and so it was nice to be able to confirm what the macro data said compared to the data that they were collecting on their particular site. I had a student a few years ago come through, and there was nothing for their local area. But when he was looking into it, he found that a number of locals had actually got together and connected their weather stations in that particular suburb. And so they had real-time data that they were sharing between themselves and the wider community to see what was going on. So you don't necessarily have to look at those particular apps, but see what's also locally available, because it really grounds it in real time. Set up notifications for rainfalls, frosts, high wind events, so you can observe immediate effects on your property. It's great to know that it's coming, or it's great to know that it's happened, but it's really informative to see it when it happens and how it falls. Going back to observation. So the technology allows us to be able to set it up so we can do that, even if your alarm's going off at 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the frost is starting. It's like, right, get out there and have a look. Depending, you may not want to because you don't want to get out of bed. It's cold. I get that. This morning was a little bit hard to get out of bed this morning when it hit 0 here. But that being said, going out and visually seeing it ground truth it. And so you can set these apps up to notify you as it's happening, which is actually very cool. Combine data app with physical markers like rain gauges and thermometers for ground truthing your observations. So again, getting the data from multiple sources so you can confirm it. But yeah. All right, mapping and property layouts. Okay. Now, again, this is not about design. I've got to put it, because as soon as maps come up, people start going, design. No, this is not about design. This is about observation. Design comes much later, right? We gather as much information as we can before we push it through a process. And it is a process. It's not just making decisions. It's not just randomly choosing decisions. There is a process with regards to that. But using these apps to be able to map things out so we can actually have, again, information that we can work from. So key features that we're looking for as far as these apps are the ability to mark points of interest, such as tree, garden beds, water tanks, or paths. There's actually apps that can help us do that, and very easily. Draw polygons or lines to represent zones, fences, and watercourses. How's water flowing through your property? Mark it out. Where are the fence lines? If you've got a larger property and you might have cattle or sheep or alpaca or whatever else it happens to be, you can actually mark out the paddocks, and therefore you can actually see and make notes on individual paddocks as well with regards to that. And even if it's on a smaller property as far as your suburban block is concerned, you can actually do that on that. And as things mature, you can make notes, and because the microclimates are going to change, the conditions are going to change, the water usage is going to change as things get more mature. And so you can have it again in real time, but also you can see the history and the management from the start to the finish. I call it a living document, and I like to do it on properties that I've actually owned. And so therefore, ultimately, if I do move on, and I have so far a few times, there's a living document that is there for the person that's sort of taking over that they've got all those references to work from. And so they can see where it started, how it got to that point, and if they choose to take it forward or not. I mean, everyone's going to make their own stamp on it regardless, but it's giving them that knowledge and information. And I encourage my clients to do the same. So they've got access to all the information that we use over the consult periods, and then using and putting that as a evolved process, a living process. So therefore it can, and again, mapping it out in real time. Overlay satellite data or terrain images to observe topography and vegetation. You don't necessarily, I know it's a bit of a fad at the minute with regards to what's the word? drones and all that sort of stuff. It's not necessary. It's great. It looks great, flying things over. You get some clearer images, absolutely, but it's really not necessary. There is a lot of information out there, especially when you're just looking at to do yourself. You don't need to spend the money to do this. Okay, it's free, it's available. You've just got to understand as well with satellite images, though, that it might slightly be off because it's taken on an angle. And so where you might look at property boundaries and it's like, oh, but that's actually in my property. That's because the image was taken on an angle. And so you've got to ground truth that. And most of the free images that you'll find are either through your local council website, PD Online, or Planning and Development Online, depending on where you are. Everyone's slightly different. So interactive mapping, they're pretty good. And also Google Earth Pro is another one. I mean, it's not updated as much as it used to be because they defunded it. I can't remember how many years ago, but it's still good enough to be able to use just when you're starting to map things out. And, there's a lot of professional designers out there that still use and only use Google Earth Pro. And again, it's completely, used to have to pay for it, but when they defunded it, they make it free. So it's easily and readily available to do so. And you can export and save maps for later reference, observation, and sharing. So that's sort of the key features that we're looking at with regards to them. Now, the three I've got on here, okay, they're all at different, I won't say levels is probably the word, but different levels of complexity. So Google Earth Pro, it's free to download, use it on your computer, very easy to use to open folders and map things out and pull in polygons and that sort of thing. And I'll show you briefly how you can do that. But it's relatively high resolution satellite imagery and terrain view, so you can actually see where there's some hills and where there's trees and stuff marked out. You can use My Maps and Google Maps to create custom layers, so you can actually create custom layers in that as well. Great for visualization for property layout, marking trees, slopes, water features, and infrastructure. Again, using polygons and lines and different shapes to be able to do that inside the program itself. Very easy to use. And I use it on a desktop, but you can access it from a tablet if you've got one, or a smartphone. I'm finding, though, with the regards to the smartphone, the older I get, the blurrier the image it gets on my smartphone, so I need a bigger screen. So I don't know if anyone else feels the same as that's concerned, but, they tell me it's age, but I'm in denial. Now, the next one that it's available as well is QGIS. So it's a GIS program. It's free that you can actually use. It does require a skill set though. It took me a long time to be able to learn to use it. It's very good, but it can be complicated to use. So if you're really into sort of that tech side and you want to get into some really advanced imagery, this is a nice free one you can use. So Advanced Geographic Information System allows importing satellite images, drawing detailed property boundaries, mapping topography, and analyzing spatial data. So you can get data sets and upload it, and it will actually just extrapolate the information from that. Ideal for those wanting to record detailed observations and track changes over time with precise measurements. So a lot of farmers use this sort of stuff as far as, GIS and GPS pinpointing and that sort of thing as well. I like to use it for creating elevated maps on larger properties when I'm doing that, because I can actually do it and structure it in such a way that not only is it color coded, it's got a little bit of a 3D feel to it as well. Again, just a completely free program that you can use. But like I said, it requires a very complex skill set to be able. Eventually you get the hang of it, but it just takes time. And the last one I've got in here as well is something called Map My Walk. Now, this was actually, it was originally designed for those that like to walk around and do hikes. And you sort of map around and walk around and, how far you've done and where things are. But the thing is, you can actually use it to observe the way you move around the landscape. So you turn it on, you walk around, and you can actually use it to mark certain things too. So you might walk around your property and mark a tree or mark a fence line or mark something else, and it actually maps it out for you in an image that you can actually export and use. That's really cool. So rather than, and it's got distances and all sorts of other things as well. So it's a mobile app that lets you walk around your property, records paths, boundaries, and points of interest. Again, it's free. Useful for tracking trees, beds, water channels, and other features where they're located. Provides an easy way to capture data in the field for later reference or analysis. Now, it's not 100% accurate, but there's a saying, good enough for now, safe enough to try. So when you're initially doing it, or you're just doing it for yourself, it's a really quick and easy way of being able to do that. And then, of course, you just extrapolate the data or download the data, and then using that to whether you're doing in Google Earth Pro, or you might be doing Inkscape, or you might be doing a more professional program that you're paying for, a CAD program of some sort. There's lots of different Vectorworks programs out there, but just looking at the free ones, the likes of Google Earth Pro or Inkscape are really good to be able to do that. So looking at just those three alone, like I said, even for most people and even a lot of designers, Google Earth Pro is enough. Okay. QGIS is nice, but it's actually very complicated to use until you get the hang of it. It's got its own feel. All right. And Map My Walk is a nice, easy way of walking around and sort of gathering the information that you need very, very quickly. Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing here and I'm going to open up Google Earth Pro. All right, so I've just opened up Google Earth Pro, and again, I've put it down onto my local community center down here, which you can see. All right, so that's the Like Up 1 Mile Community Center. Now you can scroll in, okay, and you can see where there's a gully, you can see where there's the fence lines, and you can see where trees and stuff have been planted, and you can even see down in here where there's been a number of garden beds that that was installed a few years ago, and we're now starting to expand into different spaces. With myself and a few others in the community, which is actually really cool. Now, coming in and starting to map this out. Now, while it may be, okay, well, what am I going to do? What you can actually do, it's very simple. You can actually create different folders, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be this big, pretty picture. I mean, permaculture is not about the pretty picture. Permaculture is about the connections between the elements, and it's not about having every element. It's about the amount of connections between the elements. Okay, I can't stress that enough. And so you can actually go up here, and if you go up on the top left-hand corner, you've got File, Edit, View, Tools, and Add. So if you click on Add, and there's one called Folder, click on that. All right, you might name it. Let's call it uh, Zoom, because it's for the Zoom call tonight. All right, and it's actually created a folder down here, and you can see if you're down at the bottom on the left-hand side, all right, where it's marked Zoom. So I've just created a folder. Now, what you can do is actually draw and mark on this and save it. And then you can, by unclicking it, you turn it off so you go back to the original image. So what I'll do is I'll just go up here into polygons. So at the top here, you've got polygons, which is drawing shapes. You've got adding paths, okay, image overlays. There's a few different tools, even a measuring tool. So if you look up here, show ruler, you can click on that and actually measure the distance between things as well. So rather than getting necessarily you going out with a tape measure, again, it's not going to be completely accurate, but you know, for your own purposes, good enough for now, safe enough to try. And so going up to the polygons, clicking on that, all right, and we're going to measurements, and make sure it's in meters, because sometimes it's imperial or other standards. And so we have that. And what we're going to do is just map it out. So I'll just map out the outside, all right, just to keep it simple. So you're just clicking from edge to edge along fence lines or boundaries. I know where the boundaries are. So, right. Now that's created an overlay of the image, and you can see here that the perimeter is 403 meters. You can see the area is, 6,885 square meters. All right. Now, if I was to move, I'll say okay. All right. Now, if I want to go back, it's like, oh, I wonder what's going on underneath that. You can actually go down here, and you click on where it's ticked into the box, and it's still there, but you've just removed it. So you can go in and see and add. All right. Now, if you wanted to turn that, say, for example, break it down into different outdoor rooms, for lack of a better term, we can go up to Tool, go Add another folder, and let's say Outdoor Rooms. All right. So we've turned, now remember, we've got Zoom, which we've turned off. And now so there's the untitled polygon, there it is. And we've got outdoor rooms, so we can see that. And we're going to go in and we're going to go to add a path. Go to measurements to make sure everything is in the same denomination. And we're just going to map some out. We're going to put it out. So there, there. Let's bring it together. All right. So the total length, the total is 993.9 square meters. All right. But when you're looking at that here, okay, you can change the color. All right. But then we can actually go in and we go, okay, right, done. And then we can go in and do another one. So we want to do one next to it. All right, so we go to there. I'm only doing it quickly, as you can see, but you might want to spend a bit more time with yourself to do it. Just make sure it's overlapped, and then you hit OK. There's two. So you can actually break up your landscape. But if you wanted to, you could actually do multiple folders with multiple polygons or multiple paths that you've got in there. So you can actually see different layers of what you're doing. And you can actually go in there and make notes. So right in there into the pathway itself, different notes about what's going on. Again, you're not, I mean, how long did it take us to do that? That was really rough. Okay, you can imagine sort of how neat and pretty it could be if you spent a little bit more time doing it. But I mean, just for your own purposes, it's free, it's really simple to do, and then we can turn aspects on or off. So we go, oh, what's that overlay again? Oh, yeah, so look at that. So we've got that, but this area is heading, we're using that in a different way, and you can use different colors, so you can change it and differentiate it a little bit more. But again, only in a few minutes, we're already starting to pull apart what's happening in that. And I mean, I haven't got any ideas on what this, I'm just sort of throwing things down to give a demonstration. But, if you go through the process, go through the visioning and drawing out that goal articulation, and that helps you draw out the different values and the different tools and techniques that ultimately will come into play. Tools and techniques are the final stage of that design process. And then we can start placing them based on zoning. So zoning is actually the first part of design, not the first part of observation, the first part of design. And so again, when you're just looking at this from observational perspective, you can make lots of notes, you can put a lot of things down, and it's easy to turn on and off. So we're going to turn that one off, and then we're going to turn that one off, and then we're going to, oh, there's another one, we'll turn that one off. And so you can turn things on and off based on what you want to see in different layers. It's nice, it's free, and it's easy. I wish we had more time to go through that. I could show you lots and lots of different layers as far as that's concerned, but it's really cool just to start playing with. Okay, so when you're looking at doing this, so tips for using this particular tool as far as the mapping is concerned. So walk your property, all right, regardless of what the data says online or in front of your screen or on your phone. Okay, always ground truth it again out on your property. Walk the property with a GPS enabled app to verify map accuracy. Okay, and that's where I'm sort of, walk your map, well, where you're walking or whatever it happens to be, and you can actually use that to see how it marries together. Combine data apps with photos, notes, and sketches for a richer observation. So you can take photos, you can take little videos, you can actually even do that and upload it to Google Earth Pro. So it's inside those folders, and so you can see an ongoing history as well. Okay, which is it's really cool. Yeah, especially when you're doing it for yourself. There's nothing worse than forgetting to take photographs and then look at it 5 years later and go, hey, what happened again? Because we tend to forget those things. Regular update your map as plants grow, structures are added, and terrain changes, because it will happen. It's amazing how once you've set it up, once you've done all the observations, you get to the point of design and then implementation. And if it's done right, it's amazing how fast things can move, because nature is doing the work for us. It's not the tools or techniques that we've brought in. It's a small tweak at the top of the system generally that does the work for us. And so mapping it means we can constantly be onto it and adjust, because design never ends. I don't know if anyone was hoping that there would definitely be an endpoint. Sorry, design never ends. It's continuous. And we can actually adjust and change things accordingly as things are evolving, as the microclimates are changing, as the soil profile is changing. And like I said, that slight twist at the top of the system, and generally things start to move very quickly. Use layers to separate different types of observations. For example, one layer could be trees, another could be water flow, another could be soil testing. Again, using Google Earth Pro if that's what you want to use. Every folder or every polygon or every path is a different folder, and you can just add it in and turn it on and off so you can see the different layers and how they work together. And it's not just how they work together, but also see where the tensions lie. All right, because it's not about sitting around the fire singing Kumbaya. All right, sometimes it's more Caesar on the Senate floor that stabbed 27 times. All right, but we've got to negotiate that and see where the nuance is so we can actually make it, well, not make it work, but help like conducting an orchestra. So therefore, it can start to flow through and start working together, whether it be to quick in succession, to slow it down. I don't know, depending on what the goals are for the property. So we can actually use these tools again to gather a lot of information to lead to that.
There hasn't been, however, Louise has put up a link to the tool region mapping
Oh,
system. So
yep.
yeah, there's local content.
Yeah, great,
So
awesome.
feel free
Yeah,
to check that
fantastic.
out.
And like, if you do end up moving to different council zones, not all council maps are created equal. It really does depend on the amount of funding that's put into them. So some are really, really good, and some of them are just not. And that's not because any other reason, just the sheer volume of funding that's going into it. So yeah, just gotta. Which Wombers is actually not too bad. It's actually pretty good compared to some, which is actually really good. You got access to that information. No, cool. Thank you for that. All right. So the next part that we're looking at is garden and plant record keeping. So it's not just about the plants, it's about the record keeping. Okay, management. I know those that have sort of been have come in and learnt with me over the last sort of decade or so have heard me rabbit on about management a lot, because that's where the magic happens. Everyone gets excited about observation. Everyone gets excited about design. Everyone gets excited about implementation. Oh my God, the tree's going in, the garden bed's going in. Management is forever. Okay. And that's where the magic happens. And so keeping records of your garden and plants is an important part of observation, right? Because that can lead to a feedback loop that we're looking for in that. By documenting what you see, you can identify patterns, track successes, or even failures. Remember, a failure is not a loss; it's a first attempt in learning. And by making better informed decisions over time, we learn from it, we adjust, we move forward. Digital tools can make it easy to store, organize, and access this information, even when you're out in the field. So there's some things we can actually do and take with us, especially with the fact that most of us, if not all of us, have a smartphone these days. It's almost second nature. So key features you're looking for when you're looking at picking a program: ability to create checklists, notes, and observational journals. Something you can quickly write in. Well, the last property I had, before I really sort of got into the digital side of things, I used to have whiteboards all over my property. And as soon as I had an idea or observation, I'd write it down and I'd go back later. These days, it's all on here. And so, as you're walking around, you can quickly make some notes. And it's even to the point where I can make notes and it automatically uploads to my Google Drive, which it can automatically. I mean, it's just amazing the connections when you start connecting these technologies together and quickly things can move. Record plant species, planting dates, growth progress, and yields. Okay, so again, that's you're looking at stuff where you can record this information. You can include photo sketches and other attachments to enrich your observations. Again, something online where you can actually do that. Although some of the programs, we'll talk about one of them tonight. Schedule seasonal reminders for planting, pruning, fertilizing, and harvesting. Again, you can put it in and it will remind you that something needs to be done. It's not like putting the red string on the finger and then looking at it and going, "Why did I tie that on there again?" It's actually beeping and it's telling you what to do, and because you've put it in, so it's just reminding you. Searchable and sortable records for easy reference over multiple years. So having it organized means it's easily accessible and referenced. Now, there's a couple of different ones I've got on here. Okay, so Trello is a nice, interesting one. It's a visual task management system using boards, lists, and cards. Okay, it's an online thing. You can have it on your phone, and you can actually start, just put it all in. It's useful for creating an observation board for each garden bed, tree, and zone. So you can create a new board and upload everything and make some notes on it, and it goes up into the cloud sort of thing, so it's easy to have access to. You can attach photos, notes, and checklists for each plant and task. Okay, and can also plan seasonal activities, track progress over time. And it's an app that you can have attached to an app on your phone, so you can walk around with it to make notes. When you're coming to with regards to plant identification, there are lots of different programs out there. A nice, easy one that's got a huge range of plants that you can work from is Plant ID. So it's a photo-based plant identification app. There's a free version, but also there's a paid version as well. I can't remember. It used to be there used to be separate, but I think they've just changed it to. I think it might be 30 days for free, and then you got to pay. But it's really nice to have when it's looking at helping to identify. Helps identify unknown species on your property and record them for later observation. So not only does it help identify, you can actually record it in the app as well, that you've actually searched and looked for this. Can contribute to citizen science databases while tracking your own plantings as well. So that's leading into sort of the larger community So it's not just about self and kin, but also the community as well. So you can tie into that. So you can imagine, for example, if Permaculture Toowoomba was to have a plant ID and everyone within Permaculture Toowoomba, and it would all upload, and everyone can actually share that as a citizen science for the region. How's that for a series of data to draw upon when you're looking at your property and what plants are and what you can do? That's actually really cool. All right. Gardenate is another one. All right. So Gardenate is a free one with regards to planting guides for vegetables and herbs and all sorts of other things. It can be limiting in some fashion because it's not specifically geared. It's general, not specific. So you might have to play with it, but it's a really to get this particular species and timings and stuff for your particular region. But it's a good guide to where to start. So it provides monthly planting guides for vegetables, herbs suited to your, I won't say region, but your climatic zone is probably a better way of putting it. Allows you to track what you've planted, expected harvest times, and crop rotation notes. So there's a lot of information up there. You do learn this over time. The more you use it, the sharper the tool gets. And useful planning for seasonal planting and keeping an observational record of performance. So there's three there. So the Trello with regards to storing and sorting your information. Plant ID is a really nice one to be able to identify plants. And again, it stores it, and you could potentially use it on a community scale as well, as far as, like, for example, Permaculture Toowoomba. And Gardenate is one that you could actually, it's a free one that you can tack into, but it's climate, it's in a larger macro climate, not the microclimate of your particular house or area. And so it will require some finessing as you go through. So I'm going to stop and we're going to go and have a look at Gardenate. It's a nice, easy one. All right. So this is Gardenate. Right. So looking at this, what I've done is I've just picked on, you can see on here where it says, so set your climate zone. I just put Australia temperate because Toowoomba being mostly, not all, but mostly in a temperate region. But you can see here we've got arid, cool mountain, subtropical, temperate, and tropical. Okay, and it goes into different countries as well, but I've just picked on Australian temperate. You can print it out if you like, or you can actually get, as I said, subscribe for our free email reminders. So every month it can actually email you a list. And if for August, okay, even though we're getting to the point of September, you can go through and scroll down, and it's talking about what generally you should be able to plant in your area, in your region, so carrots or cauliflowers. But, and it says on the other side, this side it says carrot, over here it says sow from seed, all right, which is the best practice as far as it's concerned. But if you click on the carrot, all right, it's telling you the different months for a temperate region that you can actually plant it. So from August all the way through to April. So it's giving you some ideas. So easy to grow, sow in the garden, sow seed depth approximately 3 times the diameter of the seed. Okay, best planted in soil temperatures between 8 and 30 degrees. So you're getting out there, you're sticking your finger in the soil, determining the temperature. Is it the right time? Yes, spacing between plants is between 5 and 30 centimeters. All right, between plants and rows. Harvest is 12 to 18 weeks. So what you can actually do is start planning. It's also even got some ideas on with regards to potential companion planting as well. So it's compatible with, or potentially compatible with, onions, leeks, lettuce, sage, peas, radishes, tomatoes, beans, celery, and rosemary. And it's still telling you what to avoid. Now, the reason I say, where it says they're compatible, and the idea of companion planting, not all plants behave the same way in the same climate. Okay, so sometimes they work together, sometimes they hate each other. There's a lot of factors involved with regards to that. There is no one size fits all. So there's a caveat on that. But having a look, and it's telling you how to do it. So you can go in and let's go look at another one. All right. Dill, because I'm a bit of a dill. All right, so going in and having a look, we can actually sow the seed. So here you can see it's got more spread. So sow in January, February, March, August, September, October, November, December. Transplant, so if you're doing it in a seed tray, okay, you transplant it of the time, there's the dates that you can transplant it. And, when you're looking at, sowing the seed and transplanting out. So it's giving you the different times of what to do what. It's taking the stress out of it. Now, like I said, things will be different for your site, but this gives you a good starting point of where to begin. Again, having a look down, spacings between plants, some information with regards to it, a bit of culinary hints with regards to cooking and using. Yeah, and down on the bottom here, there's lots of comments from people or even questions. So if you're not certain, you can scroll through those question sections just to get a bit more information. But again, nice, simple, easy to use, that we can actually quickly have access to. All right, so tips when you're looking at using this stuff. Okay, taking notes consistently, even a few lines a week, can reveal patterns over time. Permaculture we design from patterns to detail. We need to understand the patterns. So even if it's just a few lines each week about something, I know people who've been measuring the weather or rainfall for decades, and they still, if there's no rain, they still go to the journal and write 0. All right, they're making that notation. And so, regards to what is going on, regardless of what it is, what's going on in your garden, just simple observations. For me, getting up of the morning, making that cup of coffee, walking outside, and during that morning Zen walk around the property with my coffee, that's when I'm making my observations. That's when I'm writing things, and then I come up, and then I might make little notes or note what's going on, and then sort of write, and then make notes, and then over time, it's building the story of my own site, or my client side, or whatever it happens to be. And that's showing a larger in the end, it builds a pattern that we can work from. Again, it's great to have the digital tools, but it's only a snapshot in time. These can help us with our observations. Use photos to complement written observations. Visual records are often the most informative. So they say the picture's worth 1,000 words. It's quite true. All right, combine multiple tools if needed. So you can actually combine the likes of Plant ID for identification and then Trello to store the information as far as your journaling. So you can actually combine these things, and they can automatically link and start creating that database on your own. Once you've set it up, you've got to set it up though, which makes things immensely easier in the long run. So again, if you want to use the likes of Plant ID and Trello as far as a community is concerned, you can imagine how quickly, if everyone is doing it, that are we taking notes and it's all uploading, that it's actually building a really big picture of what's going on in the region that everyone can draw from. And it's just simple, free technology that we can use. Set seasonal reminders in Trello for prompt regular observation and data entry. Okay, so it's just to remind ourselves, oh, haven't done it yet, got to go in and do that. Because we forget, we're human, and that's really cool. But again, the more we do it, the more the habit we get into doing it, the more information we're going to gather and the more pattern that we're going to see. Okay. Now, Adam, is there any questions with regards to that section?
No, there hasn't been.
Okay, great. Listen, experts, I love it. All right, so productive trees and local plant knowledge. Okay, observing and tracking productive trees, fruit, nut, or multiple species trees is a key part of permaculture practice. Um, you know, just because the tag says it's going to behave in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's going to. Again, plants behave differently in different climatic zones. Okay, that's just reality. Having accurate information about what species thrives locally helps you develop and make informed planting and observation decisions. This one did really well, this one didn't. Right. So again, as a community, region-specific resources are particularly valuable in Queensland because there's so many different climatic, like even when you're looking at the macroclimates and then breaking it up and then breaking it up again, there's a lot of information at that, and it's really invaluable. It's really valuable, not invaluable. Well, it is invaluable as well. So actually, with regards to climate and rainfall and soil conditions and sun and wind and bringing it all together so we can actually start piecing things together when we get to the design phase. So key features to look for when you're looking at these particular apps. Things that I can identify trees and plants suited to your local climate and soil. Okay, so there are actually some interesting apps out there that allow you to do that. They're not there's not a huge amount of information in them, and that's just due to time, funding, and all sorts of other things. But there's some really interesting ones that actually serve as far as the Australian natives is concerned, which is really cool. Access planting guides, flowering and fruiting times and habit growths, record observations for tracking growth, productivity, and health over multiple seasons. Again, getting more data over time, providing links to regional planting guides or native plant databases for accurate recommendations. Also, you need to consider as far as the native is concerned. So native means native to country, not necessarily native to place. So you've got some plants might be really well suited, even though it's a native to one area. You move it into another area, it becomes extremely aggressive and invasive. it's just something you've got to be aware of. Even natives do that. Okay, so just because it's native doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the right plant in your space. So some of the apps. Grow Native is a nice one that was started by Griffith University, funded by the Queensland government for a while. It's an app you can download onto your phone, and you put in your postcode, and it comes up with a range of natives meaning native to country, not native to space, that will actually thrive in your particular region. You can even choose down to the different gardening styles. So you might want a cottage garden look, or you might want, whatever it may be. And it will actually help recommend different species. And it will even down to when you're getting into it, it'll identify the different insects that will bring in. So it's actually a really nice app. The funding has kind of run out. So while the app is still active but I found like on my new phone here, the app no longer works because the technology is too advanced because the app was not updated. Right, so sometimes that happens, but you can actually still access it. Well, you can access it online as well, but it's a really nice one, useful for observing natives and understanding their growth cycles. And the website, and I've got the website up, we'll bring it up, includes downloadable resources and plant lists, which is just sweet. All right, that we have access to this information, and it's free and readily available. We talked about GardenAid already. Okay, so the free version with regards to vegetables. Okay, but also don't ignore your local council or your land care apps and data sets. Okay, there's a lot, land care has got a huge amount of information. So tapping into that as well. And there's a lot of grants and there's a lot of recommendations and even councils. I've got a heap of stuff here because I lived in Lockyer Valley for 17 years. I've got a heap of stuff around here that the council put out, Lockyer Valley Regional Council, with regards to species that will do really well and the functions they give. There's a huge amount of information out there. It's free. Something as simple as making a phone call if you can't find it, make a call to the council. I find typically they're really helpful. And so they'll put you on. In some instances, they've found it and emailed me the information at a later stage. That's great. That's awesome. It's making things easier. So yeah, tap into those resources as well. Just now thinking about it. So the Grow Native app. All right. So this is just the website or the introduction to the website. So release date was 2017. So it wasn't that long ago. It's available on iPhone and Androids. Okay. And it talks about, like I said, quite literally, you can go in and type in your postcode and it will give you the different plant species that are available. You can go down to plant selection based on location, plant selection based on gardening style. So you can choose your gardening style in the selection, and it will come up with a species of plants and colors and other stuff as well. It's just incredible with what's available. And then, of course, there's up down the bottom here, they've got other related posts about where you are, which has got additional information. This is off the website, additional information that you can actually download and explore as well. So it's not just what the app provides, but on the website itself, like 50 different things that we can actually have a look at based on different regions, which is just incredible. So yeah, that's a really good app to have, and it's nice and makes it really simple. Now, it doesn't necessarily, just because it recommends it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you, but it's pointing you on a particular path. One of the biggest questions I get from a lot of people is, what can I plant? Well, it's like, there's millions of species of trees in the world. There's a lot you can plant. What functions? What is it going to work for you? Just because the app tells you that this is a good thing to plant doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing. So you need to explore that and check that out to see if it's right for you. But this is a great way of narrowing down some of those lists. So key points with regards to using these tools. So start with a digital tree inventory. So species, planting date, location, and key observations that you've made. It sounds like a lot of work, but I say a lot to students or who are clients, whatever. One tree a week is still 52 trees at the end of the year. 1 square meter of garden bed a week is 52 square meters of garden bed at the end of the year. You don't have to go hard with this. But it's amazing when you do that. So 1 tree a week, 52 a year, over a 3-year period, that's 156 trees. That's a lot of trees. It's not rushing, but you're gathering the information with regards to it. Include photos, notes for each tree to monitor development over the years, so you can see it over time. Cross-reference multiple sources to confirm suitability for your local conditions. Again, don't just take it from one source, test it. Okay, use this observation data to inform future planning, companion planting experiments, and it's experiment, not reality, and seasonal care routines. So you're building your own your own plant profiles slowly but surely over time. And these are great tools that we can use. Now, Adam, is there any questions from that particular section?
I can't see any questions, Michael.
Thanks, Deb. So in a nutshell, boiling it all down, the apps and tools we explored are not design software. They can be, but with this, at this point, it's all about observation, not about design. Their primary use is to support observation information gathering, which is the foundation of permaculture practice. It starts with a good observation. Tracking sun patterns, climate data, mapping land features, recording plant growth. It's all observational, but can actually help us start making informed decisions so we can start having that +1 effect on our landscape, which is essential, okay, as we make decisions. And observing over time, because things will change over time. And there are some experiments I run where I'm planting particular, like certain similar species on different sites, and I'm observing how they grow. And it's not far from each other, but I'm observing the differences, different soil types, different sun pattern, different watering pattern, and I'm experimenting and playing with these, how they're growing in these different environments, and making notes. And so when you're doing that for yourself, it allows you to notice patterns and strengths and constraints of particular species. Okay, so it's not just for your property, but also potentially for your community as well. All right, so that's actually, it's again, good observation is the foundation of any good design. Does anyone open the floor? Sorry, Deb, I went a little bit over.
That's okay.
Anyone have any questions? Overall questions? All right. There's so many different apps and technologies out there that we can use, but I just narrowed it down to those few because I wanted to try and give a broad spectrum with regards to it. It's not all about mapping. It's not all about, again, really, it was about observation and using different tools, but also how to connect, like I said, with regards to, the online folder one, which you do have plant ID, and the next thing you know, you're starting to, and then if you start doing that from a community base, I mean, I don't know if you guys are doing that already up there, Deb, but can you imagine the possibilities that if everyone who's doing it, and then all of a sudden it's building this localized database with local observations? I mean, that's half the battle, and then moving on to just something as simple as Google Earth Pro. It's a very simple. I see that question. I will answer that question in a moment. That's a controversial one. Just moving it into the likes of some Google Earth Pro, which is a free program that anyone has access to, and it's very simple to learn. QGIS is a lot more complicated, but like I said, Google Earth Pro, and then leading on to the different tree apps and planting guides and all, and then slowly over time narrowing it down for your particular site. Okay, time is your ally, not your enemy in this. All right. Now there was a question that came up with regards to what are my thoughts on AI. Well, listen, AI is an interesting one. It's a new technology. There's a lot of people are embracing it. I do know a number of permaculturists who are also embracing it, which is, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I do understand the level of energy that it uses, the damage that it's causing to the environment, the embodied energy that we talk about. So there is some concerns. I mean, I have concerns with regards to it. Also, it's not always accurate. It's about 40% wrong. Now, the reason why is the way it gathers information and draws it in, and it might do it very quickly. It might seem accurate, but it's about 40% wrong, and that's because of the sites that it sourced the information from. So it's getting harder. I know just through working with the University of Queensland, it's getting harder and harder to detect. And so, more and more people are embracing it. There are patterns in it that you can identify if you know what you're looking for. But I've noticed that more and more permies are starting to embrace it. I've actually received a couple of newsletters recently that I looked at, and the whole thing was written by AI, and it's like, holy crap, I never expected that. But my thoughts are, while it may seem like a useful tool, what is the long-term cost? As far as energy, as far as landscape, as far as water, and also for ourselves. When we're outsourcing, like anything, it's about self-reliance. When you outsource it to something like that, you're not doing it yourself, and you're not learning. And so it's interesting that you spend a little bit of time in that research and in that observational space rather than just relying on AI to tell you, because it's telling you. It's not you're not nuancing it out. You're not seeing those details, and it's those details that matter. rather than just looking at the specific that it's giving you. We start with patterns and go to detail. Now, I don't know if that's a popular answer. That's my answer. It is a controversial issue, but it's also everywhere. So it may get to the point where it's just inadvertently in our lives. I know every time my computer uploads, I have to go in and I have to undo all the new AI apps that Windows has put in or something else has put in. It drives me nuts. But yeah. What are your thoughts on it, Tim? Actually, have you got any thoughts on AI at all? Or?
On AI, I think as an assistant in some areas, it can be a way of perhaps sifting through information for you, but I think it must have a human input. It's very general, probably wishy-washy kind of answer, but I can't see AI ever taking over from the ability that humans have to really look at emotions and empathy and so on.
Yeah, and also, absolutely, that's a great point there, Deb. And we don't make decisions based on knowledge. Generally, we make decisions based on emotion, and then we try and justify it with logic. And so, it's like when it's something that doesn't have that is telling us what to do, then we're losing that really important step in our designs. So, yeah, it's an interesting subject, and maybe if they find a way that it's not so energy rich or intense or whatever, it's causing so much damage or whatever it happens to be, it's just maybe then I don't know. It's only a relatively new technology, so that's a tough call. Yeah.
So, Michael, I'm sure there are lots of other questions from people that they're probably at the stage where they are just really interested. Well, I wasn't going to say overwhelmed, but you've given us a really good base to be able to gather information, the information that we need as individuals. So most of the people online tonight are just individuals interested in their own property, and being able to use SunCalc to see where the shadows are at different times of the year, the longest day and the shortest day and so on. Looking at bomb weather, the historical records of rainfall and temperature and the extremes, they're all really, really important things. Google Earth Pro, and obviously other apps like Gardenate and Grow Native. People will be able to try them. And I think you've given us a good basis for what to look for, and we will have members that are at different stages of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you most sincerely. And I can see that there are lots of people in the questions popping in. Thank you for that, Michael. But that's a very, very sincere thank you from me, but on behalf of all of our members who've been online tonight.
No, thanks everyone, and thank you for having me. Now, the one thing I do mention before everyone goes, I'm notorious for setting homework. I'm going to give you some homework. Go play with this stuff. All right, it's great to have, but go play with it, and don't experiment and try different things and different combinations, and you'll end up coming up with something that works for you. Just because I talked about those particular 9 in particular order, you might go, actually, I'm going to add this, and you can come up with your own combinations, which is incredible. It's awesome. It makes it unique for you. But that's your homework. Go home and play with it. All right, and come up with something, and I'm sure at some point you may have a show and tell at one of the Permaculture Toowoomba meetings where people can bring all the observations they've brought together and see how they've used the technology. So that would be fantastic to see.
Sounds great. Thank you, Michael. And if anyone has any other apps or tools that they use, pop them onto our Facebook group so that everybody's aware of them. There might be things out there that we haven't heard about.
And I am going to render, this has been recorded, and Deb's going to send me the link. I'm going to edit it and render it down and put it up on YouTube, and I'll share that to Permaculture Toowoomba and whatever else. So anyone who hasn't seen it or want to go to review the talk, please, by all means, go and have a look and play and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, well, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We had a really good sized group online tonight. Thank you, Michael, for all of your information, and I hope you all have fun playing and doing your homework.
Good night, everyone. So long. Farewell.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael.